Hello everyone and welcome to another Guild Wars 2 video. Today we're going to be going over the Living World update of the Dragon's Reach Part 2. To start with, we'll do a summary of all that happened in the episode, just to make sure everyone knows actually what happened. Discuss some fun theories and some fun things you can notice throughout the patch, and then just give my general idea of how well the patch was done and how much I enjoyed it, pretty much. So as you may recall from the last episode, Casimir had said that she's already met with the Countess, and the Countess agreed that she'll be able to get the Queen to go to the summit. So, this episode starts with a little complication on that. Casimir sends you a letter that the Ministry, like they always love to do, is making trouble for the Queen. Some minister is spreading rumors that not only did the Queen meet with Scarlet prior to Queen's Jubilee, but she also conspired with her to give her full control over the Watch Knights. Until these rumors are debunked, the Queen will not leave Divinity's Reach, as that could just add more fuel to the fire for this. So off you go with Casimir to Divinity's Reach to try and find the nobles who are spreading lies about the Queen. This leads you into a really kind of cool instance, which I'm sure infuriates a lot of people because it's all dialogue and no combat, and you have to pay attention to the dialogue or else it makes you start over the sequence again. Once you arrive, you talk with Countess Anise for a little bit, where she talks with Casimir and basically says that her title is only, a part in a way, as long as she can show the Queen that she would be of great use to her, and her skills would be something that could be valued. I'm going to skip over a lot of the stuff in this thing, because it really is a lot of dialogue that just trying to sneak around people and get them to admit that they saw something they didn't say they saw, and all of that fun stuff. After talking to a bunch of the ministers and a bunch of the nobles all over the party and gathering facts, you're able to gather that it is in fact Minister Estelle who is the one spreading the lies. After confronting her, she eventually says that she saw not only Queen Jenna under a bridge talking to Scarlet, but also Countess Anise, so you must go back and talk to her, where it is discovered that Anise was actually using a clone the whole time in the party to distract everyone, while she was keeping eyes on everything. She tells you to go back to Estelle and drop the nice little hint about her gambling in a bandit's den, and that will shut her up pretty well. And once you drop that nice little tidbit in there, she tells you to shut up and that it's a baseless accusation, and then Anise and the Shining Blade come in and take her away. Countess Anise then asks Casimir to stay and join the Queen's entourage when she goes to the summit at the Grove, and you basically secured the Queen's attendance to the summit. As soon as you leave the party, you receive a letter from Tyria saying she has good news and bad news. The good news is that the waypoint recalibration device she's been working on seems to be working properly, and that she's been monitoring the waypoint network that they aren't getting attacked again, so it seems to be working the way she said. And for the bad news, Flunt insists that he will not leave until he gets a demonstration of how the device works, and he's kind of holding his attendance at the summit over her head as a reason to get her to show him how it works. So off you go to the Leyline Chamber to try and help Tyria with her demonstration, and when you arrive, you find a bunch of basically mini waypoints all over the ground, and the waypoint calibration device set up and ready. The whole idea of the test is that Tyria is going to imbue these tiny waypoints with the same type of magic as the regular waypoints have, and then show the waypoint calibration device's effect on them. The tests go really smoothly and show that the waypoint recalibration device is working as intended and sort of satisfies Flunt on that part of it. However, do remember that these little mini waypoints are charged with the same energy that the regular waypoints have. And what have the Mordrum been going after and attacking for magical resonance this whole time? Oh, the waypoints. So, like 10 of those gathered in one room seems to be quite attractive to them, right? Yeah, it is, and they attack the middle of the test and try to basically start trying to siphon off all of the magic. After defeating several of the regular Mordrum, a Mordrum Ley Leecher appears, which is trying to actually directly siphon the magic from the waypoints. You then get a choice to either you operate the calibration device or Tyria operates it and you protect her, and basically drain the waypoints before the Mordrum Ley Leecher can. After going through a couple rounds of this and fighting the Ley Leecher in between, the Ley Leecher is finally defeated. Once the Mordrum are all defeated, Flunt pulls the usual Arcane Council move and basically tells Tyria, good job, and now we're going to confiscate that as your reward of the College of Synergetics, and we'll get it back to you once you're not a little kid. Tyria is not very happy with this and says, no, won't let you take it, grabs the device, and runs off into the desert to get away from Flunt. You must pursue Tyria into the upper part of Dry Top to your southwest, where, she's been running through the desert with a very interesting magical artifact which can drain the waypoints and possibly maybe even raise them to make them get attacked at certain locations. Who is all in this desert that would be very interested in such a device and would love to have ownership of it? Oh, the Inquest! So the Inquest set up an ambush for her, chase her into basically a dead end, and disable her golem Scruffy. You and Bram arrive in the nick of time and defeat the golems and the Inquests that are menacing Timey. Once the golems and Inquests that are already there are defeated, the Inquests call in one of their new prototype golems, which is a light infused golem. This golem seems to be a new type of golem which is working off the Zephyrite aspect crystals as its focus, instead of whatever the Inquests were using previously for their golems. This means that he has several fire attacks and things you would expect from gaining a fire aspect crystal. Once this golem is defeated, you're able to convince Timey to hand over her device to the Arcane Council just to get them to come to the summit. With the device in hand, Flynn agrees to go to the summit, and this mission is complete. The final thing in this patch is, of course, the summit itself, the World Summit. Once you arrive, you catch up with your regular companions, minus Casimir, who's part of the Queen's entourage, and then you go to check in with Traherne himself. Traherne's here basically to answer any questions about the Pact's current plans and to give you moral support. He also tells you that the Pact had been planning to go against Kralkatorrik of all the dragons, and that when they heard the dragons roar from the west and saw all the attacks that were happening, that decision changed very quickly. After that, the procession of world leaders walk through the gathered crowd with a representative from all of the 5 major races here. Once they all gather, you meet in the Umfalos chamber and all gather before the avatar of the Pale Tree to have the summit. What follows is basically you give a speech saying how important this all is, and then you address each of the leaders' independent concerns and basically get them to go, fine, we don't agree to do this, but we'll at least stand here and talk with each other and try and figure out if there's some way we can work together. Once all the leaders agree to listen and try to find out a way to work together, the Pale Tree starts to say that they've given her great hope for Tyria, and then screams very loudly. Her avatar collapses on the ground, and Mordrum begin appearing on the platform and down below. Casimir makes a portal to get all the world leaders and you out from the Umfalos chamber, while you basically save all the leaders from the Mordrum, some of them needing more saving than other, Flunt. Once all the leaders are saved, you talk briefly with the Pale Tree, who basically says she is weakened and can't take much more, and be warned that there is another Mordrum coming. After that, you're supposed to go investigate the sound you hear, and moving towards the portal disappears, and a little cutscene goes around showing all the bioluminescence of the Umphalos chamber going out. The cause of the sound you hear and the bioluminescence and magic all failing is a dragon champion which has appeared from Mordremoth, the Shadow of the Dragon. You then must defeat the Shadow of the Dragon by basically weakening it, destroying the tendrils that appear, and then doing as much damage as possible to him when he's in his weakened state. After doing enough damage to the Shadow of the Dragon, he falls away from the Pale Tree and flies back to the northwest, back towards the Maguma jungle. Once the Dragon Champion has been driven away, the Pale Tree asks you to come closer because she has something to show you. What she shows you is what should be showing right now in the background now, which is another vision sort of thing. In the beginning of the vision, if you look closely, you can see the branches are in the shape somewhat like the Pale Tree. She basically tells you, please, I have something to share with you, and that she is fading. And as she says that, it goes from an autumn sort of trees into a winter, like a forest in winter where it's very dark and all dying. After that, it goes to an area in the clouds with a bunch of magic shooting up from the ground, and the dragon champion you just fought flying around it. Then going underground, showing a cave full of crystals, and then all of the crystals kind of breaking, vines going everywhere, and vines just growing all over the place. Once that's over, the vision ends, the portal reopens, and some of the wardens come running in to try and protect the Pale Tree and heal her if possible. You go back down below and check on all of the world leaders, who basically all say, okay, yeah, I guess Mordremoth is a serious threat, you just proved it to us, we give you our support. Once that's done, you go back and talk to Traherne, and basically he says he's going to go back to the Pact and try and organize all of them to be ready to fight Mordremoth. And he also shares with you an idea that this was a little too well planned. It happened at a very opportune time where all the leaders were together, and basically he thinks someone dropped a hint on it to Mordremoth somehow. After that, you go back and meet your companions to talk with them briefly about your vision. They don't really have much to add to the vision, but they do basically figure out what they're going to do for when the next update comes around. Marjorie and Casimir decide to go to the Priory to investigate and do some research into things and see what they can figure out about the Elder Dragons and so on and so forth. Taimi goes back to the Radisum to see what she can learn from there, and Rox and Bram go to accompany her to make sure she doesn't get into any more trouble, basically. Once done talking with your companions, you can overhear Anise talking to Canuck and basically ordering him to go follow the pack to their staging area because she needs someone to learn all they can about their plans. She needs someone there who can get the job done. And that's all that happened during this episode of The Living World. So now on once again to the fun theories we can come up with from this patch, and surprisingly there's actually not that much to go into here. The first main theory that's been an old theory for a long time now that this patch seems to give a bunch of evidence to is the theory of who Anise actually is. This episode features Anise as more of a main character again and gives us more of a chance to see how she operates and give more conclusions on the way she acts. The main thing that gives the rise to this old theory once again is the conversation that Anise and Canuck have when they're standing around in the grove waiting for all of the world leaders to show up. During this conversation, Canuck's trying to get her out of messing with them constantly and basically hints with how strong of an illusionist she is, he wonders how old she even is. She responds to that with "not here, not now, and not ever" very seriously, and of course, for her being that defensive about it, it sort of implies she's trying to hide something. Now, for those of you who don't know, Livia is a necromancer from Guild Wars 1 who was able to find the Scepter of Or, and who we know was alive at least during the point of Lion's Arch founding, which was 150 years ago, I think, at least. So in other words, it's been 400 years since Guild Wars 1. She'd been alive at least 200 years, so it's very likely she's still around now. A lot of people are shouting about how it's not even possible for her to be a Mesmer because, of course, she was a Necro and that there's no class changes. But if you look into the way that the old Guild Wars 1 magic worked, which is something a friend of mine, Fritanga, told me, Mesmer magic and Necro magic are very similar in the way that they operated back then. They've sort of branched away from each other now, but they were very similar in curses and all of that kind of stuff. So the two professions, of course, have a very common base to be able to go between the two. And also, we haven't really dealt with someone who's been alive 400 years to be able to have the time to learn how to use Mesmer magic after being a Necro. It's very possible you can get multiple professions like this if you're alive for 400 years. Anyways, it is very possible that Anise actually is Livia, and Livia is for sure still around somewhere in the Guild Wars lore. She wouldn't just disappear for no reason. So now on to another fun theory that people have been throwing about, and I don't actually believe this at all, but it's fun to mention anyways, is the theory of how the Mordrum ended up attacking the Pale Tree at the exact moment that they did. So some people are saying that Anise or someone like that was able to tell Mordrum off that was happening, which doesn't really make sense since Queen Jenna was there. Another fun theory that people have been bringing up is the fact that if you notice the effect that it had on all the world leaders when the Mordrum attacked, is they're all very united now and going after Mordrum off. Some people believe that the Pale Tree actually made all of that happen just to make it look like the Mordrum off were attacking, like that was all a big illusion or something. While I guess it's possible, I really don't believe that would be true, because that's not, I mean, the Pale Tree has never worked that way. She's been pretty forward with everything she's shown us and done with us. Also, it didn't really seem like it was that necessary at the time, because leaders were all starting to work together, even if they weren't giving their full consideration behind it. So, if you rule out the Pale Tree as the one making it, who is the one who informed Mordrumoff that all the leaders were going to be there? Well, there's fun theories about that as well, like it could be Anise, it could be Kaith, considering she has a dark side that is secret we don't know about and we still don't know about. There's also another nice theory that I actually am more inclined to believe, which is that we were the ones who told Mordrumoff where we would be. So if you remember, we went into Scarlet's machine and we got to see, basically we ended up seeing Mordrumoff and Mordrumoff looked back kind of thing, just like Scarlet went through. Now, we saw some very interesting things there that could give us hints to the future, but couldn't Mordrumoff have seen the same and seen the inkling we had in our head of maybe how we're going to do the council? Maybe after that vision, Mordrumoff is actually in our head and just hasn't been able to corrupt us, can just sort of see some of the stuff in our mind and be able to play off of that and use it to his advantage. But anyways, at this point in the living story, there's no real way to tell who was able to tell Mordrumoff and who tipped him off to all the leaders being there, so that's kind of a theory to shelve for a later date and see what happens. Oh, and there was one thing I almost forgot, which is during Timy's instance, we get to see a new Mordrum, which is a ley leecher. Now, there's not much theory behind this besides just saying this ley leecher seems to be a lot like the eye and mouth of Zhaitan. Like, for instance, the ley leecher seems like a mouth of Zhaitan for Mordremoth. It's going in there and absorbing magic. So, Mordremoth is sending out minions much like Zhaitan was to devour magic and be able to bring it back to him, which is interesting and a nice parallel between the dragons. But that's really all there was that I'm going to discuss theory-wise in this episode, and now I guess I'll move on to my personal feelings on this episode. I really, really enjoyed this episode, especially as sort of a capstone for them going on a break again. So the early missions in this episode gives us a way to see into Divinity's Reach, which is an area we haven't seen since Queen's Jubilee and all of that, and see how it's progressing and see the Ministry still doing its usual. Even while everything's falling apart around them, they're still trying to tear Queen Jenna from the throne. The Arcane Council is still being terrible, which they've always been terrible. But I have to say my favorite part of this entire episode was for sure the final instance. Most of the episode was executed really well. It was able to bring in a lot of characters from the old personal story. It brought Traherne in. It gave even the hint of, oh, the Pact were preparing for Kralkatorrik, but now this seems like a greater threat, so we're going to go for him. Also, I have to say, I get shivers whenever I played through this episode. It, like, gives me chills whenever the Pale Tree screams. It just... That was really well done. The voice acting on that and the whole timing of it, it actually felt like, oh wow, something terrible just happened. The boss fight of this instance is one of the better boss fights we've had so far. We get to see a new dragon champion. Well, not really a new one for Sylvari, but we get to see it in the flesh for once, I guess. It's actually not super challenging, but it is not easy either to just avoid everything in that fight. All in all, I'd say this was a very good... I mean, last episode was a build-up to this episode, and that's why that episode suffered. But this episode benefited from it quite a bit. I would say this is my favorite episode so far, and it seems like I say that every time there's a new good episode, but this one was a very good episode, especially pretty much entirely off of the final instance. It left us at a good stopping point with the Pale Tree injured, and nowhere where we're really going after this besides doing research, which takes forever anyways. And so that's a nice way to leave a gap for a little bit in the living story. And that's all for the Dragon's Reach Part 2. If there's anything I missed or anything that you just want to comment and talk about, leave it in the comments below. I'm sorry that I took forever to do this. It seems like whenever there's a break, it's like I think I can take longer and be fine. If you missed this or any of the other Living Story episodes, or just wanting to try and decide if you want to buy for gems some of the older Living World episodes, you can check out my channel. I have episode videos for every single episode on there. And once again, as always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.